They didn't lose a war. They lost a factory. On Tuesday morning, while headlines focused on inflation and interest rates, a far more critical failure went unnoticed. Inside the U.S. defense supply chain, missile production slowed. Not because of enemy fire, not because of budget cuts, but because one material stopped showing up on time: silver. How does the world's most powerful military become dependent on a metal it doesn't control? Pause. Listen. Because what's breaking here isn't just weapons manufacturing, it's the illusion of industrial dominance. To understand why missile production is slowing, we need to strip away the drama and look at the machinery behind modern warfare. Not the weapons themselves, but the system that feeds them. At the center of this story is what policymakers call the defense industrial base. The network of contractors, refiners, logistics firms, and financial intermediaries that supply the U.S. Department of Defense. For decades after the Cold War, this system was redesigned for efficiency, not endurance. Inventories were minimized, production was outsourced, supply chains were stretched across borders. Silver quietly became embedded everywhere in this system. Not in large visible blocks, but in microscopic quantities inside guidance systems, radar modules, high reliability solder, and power contacts. These components must function under extreme heat, vibration, and electromagnetic stress. Silver's unmatched electrical conductivity and stability made it indispensable. The problem? Silver is not mined like steel or aluminum. Roughly 70% of global silver supply is produced as a byproduct of lead, zinc, and copper mining. That means supply does not respond quickly to higher prices or sudden military demand. When demand spikes, production cannot simply be turned up. Since 2020, that demand shock has arrived from everywhere at once: solar panels, electric vehicles, AI data centers, and now accelerated weapons replenishment. Meanwhile, the United States imports the majority of the silver it consumes, while refining capacity is concentrated abroad. The defense sector doesn't compete in an open market, it competes in a crowded one. So the question becomes unavoidable. What happens when national security depends on a metal the system can't source fast enough? That answer lies not just in geology, but in finance. Modern missiles are no longer mechanical weapons. They are flying data centers. Inside each unit are layers of sensors, processors, and high-frequency communication systems that must operate flawlessly under extreme stress. At these tolerances, silver is not a luxury. It is a requirement. Copper corrodes, aluminum overheats, substitutes fail over time. The issue isn't how much silver is used per missile. It's that every single critical electronic component depends on it. When even one supplier misses a shipment, the entire assembly line slows. Miss two, and production halts. This is how a microscopic material becomes a macro-level constraint. For decades, military demand for silver was predictable and relatively small compared to industrial use. That assumption is now obsolete. The energy transition pulled silver into mass deployment: solar panels, EVs, charging infrastructure. At the same time, AI data centers began consuming silver-intensive power systems at scale. Then came war. Missile inventories that were designed to last years were consumed in months. Replenishment demand surged into a market already stretched thin. This is not a normal demand cycle. It is stacked demand. Multiple megatrends hitting the same supply at once. Here is where the story turns financial. Refiners and manufacturers do not simply buy silver and wait, they hedge. Physical silver is matched against futures contracts to lock in margins. Under stable prices, this system works. But when silver prices rise quickly, hedges turn toxic. A $2 move in silver can trigger tens of millions of dollars in margin calls overnight. Liquidity disappears. Credit lines tighten. Some refiners are forced to slow shipments, not because they lack metal, but because they lack cash. Production doesn't stop with an explosion. It stops with an email from a bank. Unlike oil or gas, silver supply cannot respond quickly to price signals. Most silver is mined as a byproduct. You don't open a silver mine. You increase copper or zinc production and hope silver comes with it. New mines take 10 to 15 years. New refining capacity takes years more. Strategic stockpiles were never rebuilt after the Cold War. Meanwhile, countries with concentrated refining capacity, most notably China, sit upstream in the supply chain. The result is a system that looks robust on paper, but fragile in motion. And once fragility enters a military supply chain, it doesn't stay there. To see why this matters, zoom out. The United States designs some of the most advanced weapons on Earth, but when it comes to critical metals, it operates inside a globalized refining system it does not control. A large share of silver processing capacity sits overseas, while price discovery still funnels through hubs like the London Bullion Market Association. This creates a strategic asymmetry. In peacetime, it looks efficient. In crisis, it becomes a vulnerability. Countries with tighter control over refining, logistics, and inventory buffers can prioritize domestic needs. Countries optimized for just-in-time delivery cannot. The difference shows up not in headlines, but in lead times, delivery schedules, and quietly delayed contracts. The consequences cascade quickly. Direct effects appear first. Higher cost per missile, longer production cycles, and procurement bottlenecks that force prioritization. Some programs move forward, others wait. Indirect effects follow: pressure on defense budgets, knock-on inflation in electronics, and delays across civilian industries competing for the same metal. But the most dangerous consequence is psychological. Deterrence relies on credibility, and credibility relies on production capacity, not just stockpiles. When adversaries realize replenishment is slower than consumption, strategic calculations shift. Markets sense this too. Investors don't wait for official statements. They watch inventories, premiums, delivery times. When stress appears simultaneously in military supply chains and commodity finance, it signals something deeper than a price spike. It signals a system under strain. There is no instant fix for a materials bottleneck like this, but there are levers, each with limits. First, recycling. Silver is one of the most recyclable metals on Earth, yet recovery rates from electronics remain low. Scaling advanced recycling could ease pressure at the margins, but it cannot replace primary supply fast enough to meet military timelines. Second, long-term supply contracts. Defense contractors are quietly shifting away from spot market exposure, locking in multi-year agreements to stabilize delivery. This reduces volatility, but transfers risk upstream to refiners already strained by financing and margin requirements. Third, strategic stockpiling. Unlike oil, silver inventories were never rebuilt after decades of cost-cutting. Reestablishing buffers would improve resilience, but doing so during a tight market risks amplifying price stress in the short term. And finally, substitution and efficiency. Engineers are exploring ways to reduce silver loadings in certain components. But in high-reliability military electronics, substitution has hard limits. Performance trade-offs are not optional. That brings us to the forecasts. In the short term, the system remains vulnerable to price spikes and delivery disruptions. Any surge in industrial or military demand tightens the noose. In the long term, unless mining and refining capacity expand meaningfully or demand is destroyed by recession, the silver market stays structurally tight. This is not a cyclical story, it's a structural one. This was never just a story about missiles, or even about silver. It's about what happens when modern power rests on fragile supply chains optimized for a world that no longer exists. A single metal, used in grams, hidden inside circuits, has exposed the limits of industrial dominance, financial engineering, and just-in-time security. If you only watch prices, you miss the signal. If you only watch politics, you miss the mechanism. Pay attention to the bottlenecks. That's where the future breaks or reshapes itself. Share this analysis, stay curious, and don't wait for the crisis to make the lesson obvious.